Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We have a brand new entry from Multiman Publishing to unbox today, and it is SCS North Africa, part of the Standard Combat Series. Series designer Dean Essig, game designer Dean Essig, and game developer Lee Forrester. It's not like I'm not like the first person to unbox this, but it's pretty new from Multiman, just came out, and we're going to have a look at it today. Now, you might have noticed, if you read the description on the website, that this is essentially an SCS version of the previous OCS game, DAC or DAC 2, with a somewhat smaller footprint, although it's still pretty big, and a considerably simpler game system. The Standard Combat Series is much more approachable than the Operational Combat Series, OCS, and people with a hunger for the Western Desert campaign in particular, which is what this is, should maybe check this out, or think about checking this out at least. So let's open her up and see what we get. The first thing we notice is, despite being a 4-map game, it is in the standard SCS inch-and-a-half box. So there's that. But despite being a 4-map game, I actually think there will be little trouble fitting the entire thing in an inch-and-a-half box, meaning basically one counter tray. So even though this is 4 maps, and we don't really see a whole panorama, and I'm not going to be able to show you the whole thing set up here, although I will give you a sense of what the maps look like. It's a pretty big footprint. It's a smaller footprint, however, than DAC or DAC 2, which have parts of Egypt on it that are unlikely to see action in the Western Desert campaign. So we start off with the standard Multiman Publishing contents card. This box should contain a box and a lid, 4 22 by 34 inch map sheets, 2 counter sheets, 1 SCS 1.8 series rulebook, 1 North Africa rulebook scenario book, 2 dice. So we have the 2 standard Multiman dice right here. We have, as is usually the case, we start out with the game-specific rules. As we've come to expect from the gamers, via Multiman Publishing, this is on a black and white, very thick paper, 28 pages. There will be some game-specific tables on the back, which in this case includes a CRT, also includes the TEC, the Terrain Effects Chart, and the rest of the book is actual stuff. Nevertheless, let's see how many pages of game-specific rules we have. I would guess it's probably not that much. Now, the standard SCS rulebook, the series rulebook, which we'll see here in a minute, is only 8 pages of rules. This has about 8 pages of game-specific rules. That's probably about average for SCS. Some games have less game-specific rules, some games have more, and then we're right into the scenarios. And as we've also come to expect from the gamers on Multiman Publishing, there's an ample selection of scenarios. Here's an Operation Brevity scenario, which is on 1 map. Operation Battle Axe, which is on 1 map. Operation Crusader, which is on 2 maps. We have Gazala, 26 May to 29 June of 1942. That's on 2 maps. First Battle of El Alamein is on 1 map. It looks like we have daily turns here, too. Operation Compass Campaign uses all 4 maps and is 24 turns. The Race to the Wire German Intervention Campaign, which is 20 turns and uses all the maps. Operation Crusader Campaign Start, November 1941. That uses all the maps and is 13 turns. Gazala Campaign Start. So there's not only a bunch of scenarios, but there's a bunch of different points at which you can start this campaign, which does actually make sense. I mean, do you start with Operation... You could start before Operation Compass if you want. There have been games that have done that. But that's the British counterattack to try to take Tobruk. That is generally considered, I think, at least in wargaming, to be the proper start of the Western Desert campaign. And here's the first Alamein campaign start. Here is our Commonwealth Order of Arrival. There's an Axis Order of Arrival. And here's some designer's notes from Dean. Be curious to read these. The designer's notes are always something you should read in a wargame, assuming they're there. And if they're not there, then I would look askance at that. Developer's notes, player notes, Random event tables, very interesting. Ooh, Italian human torpedoes, very interesting. Okay, so game-specific rules look real promising. Here is first map, map A. Here is a counter sheet on nice thick white core stock. I think there's only 2 counter sheets here. Now where there's 4 maps, my general rule of thumb is that I can get 2 counter sheets in 1 counter tray without too much trouble. If we start talking about more than that, that's when I start to feel like the counter tray is overfilled and overcrowded. Most of our counters here, we have two full counter sheets. Again, nice thick white core stock. This is a stock that MMP's been using quite a bit lately, and I like it. It's thick, but it's not too thick to where some people actually don't like them too thick. I don't understand that, but these are not too thick, and they're definitely not too thin. So what I take here is that these are Italians, that these are Germans, that these are British, and that some of these are various Commonwealth countries. For example, these are probably South Africans. Here's some Czechs. I take these to be Poles. That may or may not be accurate. I would take these color-wise to be a color typical of the Free French. These look like Sudanese colonial troops. Here's some Greeks, which did fight historically in the campaign, and I absolutely cannot read that in this light. Most of these are actual units. I would say that there is less than half a sheet that is markers. What I would probably do to organize this is just put all the units and like basic game markers, like the turn record marker and stuff like that, in the tray, and then put the things like the DGs and the control markers and the mines and stuff like that in baggies. And this is an activation system of some kind. In his recent SCS entries, Dean has done, I think, some experimenting with the basics of SCS to, I think, interesting effect. I'd be very curious to see how this one works as well. There's a little less than is standardized in SCS than you might think if you're using OCS as your barometer for that. A number of SCS, some really kind of interesting basic things are left out of the series rules. Barrage stuff, for example, is pretty much left up to game-specific rules. And that's not something you see with OCS. So, some games have that, some games don't. But where I'm going with that is that the SCS games vary a little more between each other from one another than the OCS games do. Now, part of that is just that SCS is so light. A relatively minor rules difference feels heavier in SCS because it's such a light system, whereas you have so much more that is standard in OCS because OCS is a much more rules-heavy game. So here we can see the area around Tobruk. We can see that there's some kind of escarpments or fortified lines or something like that. Here's some ridges, a lot of open desert, obviously not going to be the most colorful map. I'm going to assume you all know my opinion on Dean's art style, which I find very amenable to gaming on, so I am perfectly happy with this. And this will cover pretty much all of the Western Desert. I'm looking for map D here. This is map C. This is map D. To give you a sense of how far west this goes. This is going to be how far west this how far east this goes. Here's Alexandria. If the Axis get to Alexandria, take Alexandria, I would consider that a strategic victory for the Axis in any Western Desert campaign game. And then I guess we'll take a look at map A, which is going to be the westmost map. And you'll see that familiar hump on the coast of the North Africa that represents the kind of terminus of where the Western Desert campaign ends, up around Benghazi. So there's some action that swirls through here. I do not have the world's greatest familiarity with this campaign. I am actually playing, I want to say, my first game right now that covers the whole Western Desert campaign, and that's War in the Desert, which covers it at a much higher level than this. This is going to give you a much, much more zoomed-in picture of this campaign than War in the Desert is going to. Here's the series rules, standard SCS series rules version 1.8. As I mentioned, Same paper stocks, it's nice and thick. It's black and white, but doesn't bother me. There's not a lot of illustrations, but there's enough. It's a very simple game. It's an 8-page rulebook with the last page being designer's notes and the first page being very introductory information. This is a series that is very friendly to new wargamers or wargamers who prefer less complicated games. And this is the most recent entry in the Standard Combat series. So, North Africa, hopefully you found this video informative or entertaining. If so, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to help support Ardwulf's Lair, please do check out the links in the video description to the Patreon, the merch store, and the Ko-Fi. Until next time, thanks again for watching, and happy wargaming!